Welcome, IT changemakers, to the DEX Show with Tim Flower and Tom McGraw. Let's get into it.
Hello, changemakers. Welcome to the DEX Show. It's just me, Tom McGraw, in the host chair today. I am joined, however, by an extraordinarily special guest. The guest is none other than the author of the new Digital Employee Experience for Dummies book, an official new part of the world-famous Wiley Dummies series. And you might just recognize him already if you're a listener to this show. And that's because that author is none other than our very own Tim Flower. Tim, a warm welcome to your own show.
Mr. McGraw, thank you very much. It feels a little strange sitting on this side of the microphone, but yeah, I'm excited. And you do know what this means, though, right? We're going to have to find a time slot to give you your own show. So start thinking about a topic.
Oh my God, I better write a book, hadn't I? And listen, huge congratulations on that book. It is so good, and I know it's doing so well also.
Yeah, you know, a lot of the things in there have been rattling around inside my head for a while, and it was really good to set some time aside and get them down on paper, and looking forward to seeing folks crack it open and get some value out of it.
Love it. We'll get to your literary efforts in a minute, Tim, and in a very critical spirit, I assure you. But first of all, let's go back to the time way back when you were a DEX dummy yourself. I guess it needs a little scene setting first of all. So if you could take us back to your former life, maybe at the Hartford to begin with, what do you think?
I'm approaching the age of the dinosaurs, so I can go back quite a ways. My career really started at Digital Equipment at DEC, and it really set the stage for me to figure out. I was in field service, so figure out real under the gun pressure troubleshooting, getting things fixed for customers, but also working on communication skills and time management. Set me up really well to go to the Hartford. And in 1995, it was really the time of the explosion of the PC. Windows 95 was just being released. Green screens were being replaced by PCs. And it was a real exciting time to figure out how to manage a complicated machine with a new staff and new processes, new help desk technologies. And, the time that I spent there from 95 to 2015 was all about how to manage that distributed computing environment in a smart way. And it was a great time to be alive.
Dummy's Guide to DEC there, Tim. Thanks for that.
Yeah.
And tell us about the significant events then that took you to the point where you really realized that if you couldn't get a handle on employee experience in IT, you were gonna have a potentially untenable scenario going forward.
Yeah, so even those 20 years of managing distributed compute, we knew that we had a bigger problem than just trying to make IT better for IT. Always getting calls at the help desk, always assigning one technician to troubleshoot one PC and get that one employee back up and running, and really not knowing how big the scope of that issue is. Surely, if other people were having that same problem, they would be calling the help desk too. So that untenable problem grew and grew, but it really didn't become completely and totally obvious to us until the financial crisis in 2008. The stock of the Hartford went from $107 to $3.33. And we thought, as stewards of the brand, a 198-year-old company, we really thought that we were going to go the same way as Lehman Brothers and all the other big guys that were going out of business. And at 198 years old, we didn't want to be at the helm when that happened. We stopped everything that wasn't related to survival. We stopped PC refresh. We stopped software maintenance. We stopped purchasing any kind of upgrade that wasn't required. If it wasn't related to survival, we didn't do it. But what we found 3 or 4 years later was now we were even more out of date than we were before the financial crisis and had to update everything. Kind of the short story on that one was after going through about an 18-month program, we called it Office Automation. We almost doubled our tickets at the help desk just merely by getting to current technologies. And that's when we realized, Tom, that we were in a really untenable situation. We had to figure out not only what was driving all of those tickets, but why employees, as I traveled the field, why employees referred to the helpless desk. What is it about IT? Why can't we solve this? What are we introducing that's causing problems? And why can't we just maintain technology like a dial tone or an electric outlet? It should just work. it really became an obvious, glaring problem that we were in the dark.
Yeah, you've mentioned this before, Tim. You were actually like a kind of human engage, right? You went out to all the offices and collected that sentiment. Tell us about that process. It sounds kind of horrific, if I recall.
Yeah, so that I've never heard it referred to that way, Tom. I'm going to use that one. Absolutely. A one-man engage. I traveled to 40 field offices over the course of 6 weeks. So I was basically in a different city every day, started feeling like a rock star does, right? You wake up in the morning and you say, where am I now? Good morning, Cleveland, when you're actually in San Antonio. But the goal was to go figure out how employees were feeling, what were they dealing with, and what were some of the root causes of the problems that we were experiencing. You know, I sat with, and these are stories I tell to customers all the time as well. I sat with 2 attorneys in Cincinnati in a 4-attorney office. So half the office, 2 of them were waiting 90 minutes for an application to launch. Not an hourglass application for 90 minutes. I said, folks, give me the ticket number for these. I know who can fix these. And I was amazed to hear the response that they didn't call it in. And they didn't call it in for a whole list of reasons. One, that lack of confidence that it can actually be fixed. It'll go away eventually on its own. 2, when I have the phone to my ear with the help desk, I can't do anything else. I am 100% unproductive. Now, at least I can go do email, or I can have a phone call with a claimant. I can do other things. But the biggest concern for me was their third reason, which was when they remote control my machine to try and fix this, they're going to break 3 other things in the process because it's just trial and error. They delete my profile. Now my Outlook signature is gone. They reinstall Office. They uninstalled the last patch. It's a trial and error troubleshooting on a one-to-one basis was one of the biggest takeaways I took from from the field office visits in that not only are we in the dark and we don't know what's going on, but even when we do, we don't have enough information to accurately troubleshoot that machine. And then my bigger realization in that particular field office was it not only is it 2 lawyers in this one office, we have 80 of these offices around the country. And it turned out that almost all of them were having the same problem. So to see the implication of technology on the business, not so much that, IT fails, IT needs to spend money to fix it. It's frustrating for IT. It's doubly frustrating for the business and is actually impacting business results. So that human engage, as I traveled around the country, I had so much feedback to bring back with me and so many realizations that we couldn't continue doing business the way we normally did. We had to make a change.
How are these reports met by your peers and colleagues in IT?
You know, there's a couple of quotes that originated from our CEO that really drove us to do something different. The first one was the comment that basically said, Liam, we don't know they have issues unless they call us. And the response was, you've got to be kidding me. They're already impacted by technology and you don't know they have a problem unless they stop what they're doing and call you? How is that possible? And it's possible because we've been doing it that way for 30 years. That's why we have a help desk. If you have a problem, call us. But just think about that. Customers love you when you show up as a firefighter. You're here to put out the fire. Thank God I'm able to print my document for this important meeting. But the little known fact is there's an IT arsonist sitting in the back room that lit that fire a month ago. And we let the house burn down and then we show up as firefighters to put it out. It just isn't, not only is it untenable, you can't continue to do business that way. And the more stories, I had so many stories, they're really the power of storytelling. It's not just a great ability to have in a sales capacity, but in an IT capacity, telling the right story to drive home the message. And then those stories we were able to put together an ROI calculator, and I tallied up all of this stuff, not only on the business side, how it's impacting business, but also IT. And it eventually becomes a no-brainer. You have to do something different in order for your business to survive.
And did you have a sense, Tim, that there was an answer out there, or that you were basically dealing with a situation that was intractable due to the technology you were having to use?
You know, a lot of the technologies that we had brought in, and I said it earlier about making IT better, But very few did we look at that could make the customer's experience better. And I had some experience with a couple of tools, some diagnostic tools, some VDI assessment tools, some application performance monitoring tools. None of what we had as a 200-year-old company, we had one of everything. None of what we had, even in the client space, could give us the real-time aggregate look across the whole enterprise. And through some prior relationships and prior software purchases, I knew some of the folks that had gone over to this company called Nexthink. I had actually met Pedro years before. I told this story on the Founders podcast. I met Pedro and one of his associates who were just trying to bootstrap the business at the time in the US. I met him in the lobby and essentially said, Pedro, it was analytics. I don't need analytics. I don't know what I would do with it. I don't know how I would buy it. I don't know how I would operationalize it. Fast forward a couple of years, and now I'm coming back. Hey, Pedro, guess what? I need some analytics. We did a demo, and we actually had a very similar response, not only from me, but from my engineers that were in the room at the time. And other customers have done the same thing. You sit back for 20 or 30 minutes and the excitement builds and builds, and you see this visibility. You see the lights coming on. You start applying it to other things that are going on in your enterprise. We had one customer just after 30 minutes of silence blurted it out in the middle of the meeting. This is magical. You look at this like, oh my God, this changes everything. And what we were able to do with it really did change everything.
Do you want to go into a little detail there in terms of the practical difference it made from that rather dire picture you painted minutes ago?
Yeah. So we did a proof of value, and what we chose to do was to put out about 1,800, maybe even close to 2,000 collectors in a specific call center. We were able to cover the whole call center. It was spread across 4 time zones. So imagine the human engage needing to be in those 4 different call centers. I'd need to be there 4 different times, 4 different days, tons of travel, tons of data collection. But now we're collecting real-time data on 2,000 machines, and not only correlated with everything else that's going on the machine and visibility on each machine, but it's all correlated in time against all other machines in the POV. And what we saw happening was, the only word that I can use to describe it is outrageous. The slow boot and slow log on, not only the details, but the scope of those kinds of issues. We saw blue screens happening all over the place that some were reported, but most were not. We saw memory utilization issues almost on every device. We saw laptop users doing a 5-second power down at 2 p.m. for no apparent reason. And the volume and the amount of the frequency of issues that we were able to see allowed us to put together that ROI calculator and make the case to bring in the product. Once we operationalized it across our environment and rolled it out, we found those same issues pervasive on across all 30,000 devices. So I'll give you the 3 examples that we used to really make a difference in the reactive tickets that were coming in from employees. The first was, we found, like many other customers are dealing with, we found blue screens almost everywhere, but only on the desktops. And what we determined was the Windows 7 image that had been built for us by a provider had used a legacy NIC driver and was blue screening all of the desktops at various times of the day. One driver update solved that problem for us. The second problem we found, as I mentioned, was the 5-second power down, but only on the laptops. And what we found there was a legacy video driver that was crashing and freezing the screen. And once that happens, there was no recovery. The only recovery was to shut the machine off, hope you didn't lose data, deal with a slow boot and slow log on for a second time that day, and then get back into work. So once all of that happens, neither the blue screens or the hard crash were being reported in the way that they should have been, because you've already been impacted too much. I just need to get back to work. And the third thing we found pervasive on both desktops and laptops and VDI sessions was high memory utilization all day long, 90% or greater, causing more hard drive thrashing, slow boot, slow log on, app hangs, app crashes. And we were able to get a memory upgrade approved for 30,000 machines in about a week. Because we had the evidence of the problem, we were able to show memory upgrades not only solve the memory utilization issue in the console, but also solved the high CPU, the app hang, app crash problem as well. And we had employee feedback to say, this is awesome. Why didn't you do it before? And the reason we didn't do it before is we were too busy blaming the guys on the network team. Slow PCs in the field have to be a problem for the network guys. Turns out it wasn't. And the network guys were right. It's not their problem. So those were the three big things. And what we were able to do with that, Tom, is we brought a peak of 52,000 tickets a month back to our baseline of 30,000, which was a bad enough statistic to begin with. 30,000 for 30,000 people means basically everyone has something big enough to call in once a month. When we hit 20,000, I also hit 20 years at the Hartford and was really itching for not only a change, but to live that excitement of what Nexthink could do, but live it over and over and over again. I wanted to see that light bulb come on for as many enterprises as I could. And kind of the punchline to it is, though that ticket count now, as Hartford is still a customer, is at about 8,000 tickets a month, an 80% reduction on those reactive inbound tickets, 80%, and outsourced at $5 a ticket, it's $2.5 million a year. So it's not difficult math to show where the ROI is. And I'll just throw in the comment now, I am no longer a Hartford employee. I don't speak for them. It's not an endorsement from the Hartford. I'm still very protective of the brand, having been there 20 years. So certainly all of my work history, though, and the accomplishment there helps other enterprises understand that this is a game changer.
It's an amazing story. So let's talk now about your book, about the Dummies Guide. What was the biggest job, maybe given that history, in approaching the topic of DEX in this kind of format?
The first challenge I had to figure out was, and it took me a little while but to get to this realization, but writing a book is not the same as reading a book. It sounds simple, but you don't start at once upon a time and finish with the end and just go straight through from start to finish. It's a different process. So I almost needed to step back. In college, I studied computer programming, and there's this method of top down. You start with the outline, then you dig into the structure of each chapter, and then the structure of the paragraph within the chapter. So it was really almost like you're building a model versus doing a start to finish story. And so the challenge there was, how do I get the right stories in the right place? How do I structure it in a way that's going to make sense for the reader? And then the second big challenge was, how do I include all of this stuff rattling around in my head in something that we really want to have as an easy guide, something that's digestible, almost some reference material. So really skinnying it down and not spending so much time on the stories, but spending more time on the practical how-to. Here's the why, here's the what, and here's the how. So it really, I guess to sum that up, Tom, it was figuring out how not to write an encyclopedia and look at it more like Cliff Notes.
Sure. And talk to us about the structure that you use and why you think it works so effectively as an introduction to the space.
Yeah, I think the first part of the structure, what I wanted to do is set the stage on the problem. And there's a little bit of a history lesson, the backstory of the why we are in the state that we're in now, the reactive troubleshooting, the problems that we have to deal with, the fact that IT is here to service the business and not to kind of maintain their own operation. They're here to make things better for the employees. So really wanted to set the stage with that intro and why this technology even exists. And then get into what DEX is really all about. When we say digital employee experience, it sounds fluffy. It sounds hard to define, hard to measure. So spend some time specifically what measuring means for DEX and what are the right metrics. And then focus on that gap, the gap that I experienced traveling to all those field offices. There is a gap it's not just a communication gap between IT and the business. And when I say the business, it's the actual individual employees. The gap is also in their perception of IT, right? Nobody likes to know that the help desk that they've put together is referenced as the helpless desk. So what is that employee gap? Why do 50% of people or more don't call? How do you get feedback from them so that you know what you should actually be focusing on versus what you think you should be focusing on? So those first kind of chapters focus on what the problem was, what the measurements mean, and how to focus on that gap, and then get into the details, what it means to troubleshoot faster. And it's not just about troubleshooting faster. We can troubleshoot as fast as we want, but if we're breaking people twice a month, we're doing something wrong. And I advocate and preach this everywhere I go. Job number one is triage and fix your existing environment. There's tons of things out there that are breaking every day. But job number two is once you've stabilized, stop breaking it. Do better release management, do better change management, do better testing. And when you do roll out, make sure that what you're rolling out isn't breaking the environment. I think it's real relevant in today's world. It's the same concept. Flatten the curve, right? Find the problem on the first 10 people and stop before you roll it out to 30,000 people. There's no need to impact the volume of people before you fix something. And then the real important thing for me and for the Hartford and for every customer that we work with is it's not just a DEX and DEX management. It's not a hobby. It needs to be a discipline. And in order to make it a discipline and part of who you are, you need a program around it, something like a center of excellence. So how do you stand that up? We have customers getting real creative, calling it an experience management office. So it resonates with employees. Here's what we're doing to make things better for you. So organizing it in a way to really make the best use of the capability is really important. And then you've got to envision the future. What does the future of work look like? What's the art of the possible? So it builds, Tom. It builds from that backstory into the details. And then what does the future look like?
Fantastic. And for people listening, who is the audience of this book? Who should be checking it out for sure?
So I wanted to write it in a way that didn't fulfill the need of any single group, right? There's lots of technical manuals out there on how to troubleshoot, how to write code, lots of technical detail. I didn't want it to be too technical. There's lots of places to go for the technical piece, but it needed to resonate with those practitioners of technology. Here's why you're doing this tech. Here's what you can show as an outcome. So it definitely, I think it's relative or relevant for those frontline practitioners, but also the IT director, the frontline managers that have technology teams that are delivering services. How do you partner with more groups and bring added capability beyond just your own team? That center of excellence needs to be driven by somebody. So those frontline middle type of managers, directors can help organize around the capability, develop communication styles and communication capabilities to bring in folks like HR, bring in a business liaison, bring in the project managers. There's lots of places for collaboration when you've got this kind of capability. And then the senior leaders, right? The CIO, the CTO, the VPs that are looking at their teams to do something creative. I don't know if the statistic still holds true, but it wasn't long ago that I had read the average lifespan of a CIO is 2 years in job, and they've got very little time to make a meaningful impact and bring their fingerprint. So understanding, even at the highest levels, what DEX is and how it can really change the game, I think applies to them as well. So I hope that it's relevant to a fairly large audience.
Sure, it will be. And what about you, Tim? What about those distant days when you were a DEX dummy yourself? How do you think your book might have impacted you then?
There are many times in my professional life right now that I think back to those early days of deploying a PC one at a time, troubleshooting a PC one at a time, and not being able to fix it and having to go back again and again and make another change and go back again until you figure out what's happening, not knowing. Even before the Win 7 crisis that we were in at the time, we didn't roll out Nexthink, we rolled out Project Edison. We used the light bulb in all of our communications. If we had that frame of mind that we need to have the lights on, we need to be here more in service to our business and our customers. We always had that in our core, but we didn't have the ability to do it as well as we should have. If that capability existed, we would have avoided all of the problems that we found in our Win 7 rollout. And it's the exciting thing that I have now in my role at Nexthink is talking to prospective customers and our existing customer base. As you move to Windows 10 or even between versions of Windows 10 or you look at Windows 11, there are real ways now to organize yourself so that you don't impact the employees. You actually adopt new technology and make things better versus adopting new technology and potentially making things worse. So it was a game changer at the point in time that we brought it in. I think folks have an opportunity now to stop the bleeding, if you will, and make some transformational change without impacting the business.
Absolutely, Tim. So listen, last of all, tell the listeners, if they don't already know, where they can find and follow you, and of course, where they can find and read your brand new Dummies guide.
I'm on the usual list of suspects. I'm most active on LinkedIn. You can follow or connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm at Proactive IT Guy, rather. And on Twitter, not quite as active. I need to be more active on Twitter as well, Proactive IT Guy. And certainly take a look at the DEX Hub. You can get the link to the book there, as well as in the show notes from this episode. And the DEX Hub will give you all sorts of other resources, customer collaborations, blogs, articles, advice, and ways to connect with people. So the first stop, I think, would be the DEX Hub, and then hit me up on LinkedIn.
Brilliant, Tim. Well, listen, congratulations on the book, and huge thanks for switching seats today. Do make sure you come back on the show, won't you? Specifically in 2 weeks' time, okay? You promise?
Yeah, we're and in that time, Tom, like I said, we're gonna find a reason to put you in the hot seat.
Oh my goodness! Tim, thank you so much.
All right, man.
To make sure that you never miss an episode, subscribe to the show in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast player. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, make sure to leave a rating of the show. Just tap the number of stars you think the podcast deserves. If you'd like to learn more about how Nexthink can help you improve your digital employee experience, head over to nexthink.com. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.